Perhaps he didn't want to take part in the subjugation. I never dreamed he would leave the city on his own. But if he were to leave the city walls and have an encounter with a monster, with no combat training, Swimai would probably be helpless. It was just as Titania hypothesized. Swimai hadn't received any divine protection from the hero summoning. Reiji understood why the girls would be worried, but he didn't agree with them. No, if it's Swimai we're talking about, I'm sure he'll be all right. Truly? What makes you say that, Reiji-sama? Mark my words. Swimai knows his way around a sword, after all. Even if something attacks him, he should be able to handle it skillfully. Wah, Swimai knows swordsmanship? As Reiji nodded to confirm, the two girls exchanged glances. Contrary to Reiji's expectations, Mizuki didn't seem to know about this either. When Titania looked at her, she shook her head in return. Mizuki then furrowed her brow and turned to Reiji. But Reiji-kun, Swimai-kun wasn't part of the kendo club or anything. He traveled abroad a lot, so he said being part of a club would be impossible, right? Swimai didn't train with the club at school. He went to a dojo in his neighborhood. Was there even a kendo dojo in his neighborhood? Yeah, the one that teaches self-defense. While Mizuki was trying to recall the layout of Swimai's neighborhood, Reiji tried to jog her memory. When she seemed to recall the place he was talking about, she cocked her head to the side. That place? The one which teaches women's self-defense classes? It's certainly famous in the neighborhood, but it isn't a kendo dojo, right? Well, yeah, the self-defense stuff is all they advertise. But originally it was a dojo for ancient martial arts. Apparently they teach all sorts of things to certain students. Really? It was that kind of place? Yeah. That's what Swimai said. You're kidding. Even though I've been there with the girls from class. On top of that, ancient martial arts. Mizuki was greatly surprised by this news. Perhaps it was even more surprising because she had attended the very dojo in question herself before. That seemed to satisfy her for the moment, but Titania still had questions. So from what I'm gathering, Swimai attended a martial arts school? Just what was typical for our world. It doesn't compare to the martial arts people do here. But yeah, Swimai is a swordsman. Is that so? At a glance, he seemed like the type who knew nothing of the sort. Yeah, you'd never guess it looking at him, but he's actually pretty skilled. From what I hear, anyway. Truly? Like I said, just by the standards of our world. My goodness, to think I would misread someone like that. What's that? Oh, nothing. Oh ho 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 ho. Titania forced an unnatural laugh like she was trying to hide something. Reiji had no clue what she was thinking. While he was looking at her curiously, Titania suddenly put on a serious expression. However, Reiji-sama, even if that is the case, I do not think that's sufficient cause to assume he has the ability to escape trouble. That's true, but... It was just as Titania said. Reiji knew well enough that there was no real connection between just knowing how to use a sword and staying safe. It was also true that Swimai had no experience fighting monsters, but even then, Reiji wasn't convinced that Swimai would be in any real danger. Swimai. Despite his appearance, he's quite cunning. Once in a while, he'll do something thoughtless that defies all logic, but he's fundamentally a cautious person. Even if he encountered a monster, you think he would stay composed? It is often said that just one leer from a monster is enough to freeze most people in place. Yeah. And I know it sounds crazy, but I think Swimai would probably take it in stride. Is that so? Titania didn't seem convinced as she scrunched up her face in skepticism. It was likely just emblematic of how familiar the people of this world were with danger. Reiji, however, knew that Swimai had an unexpected personality fairly devoid of cowardice. In the past, when they had been surrounded by delinquents or gangsters, he only ever said things like, "That's all you've got?" He was practically fearless. Even when fighting, he never failed to have the same bored expression on his face. Well, that's why I'm not particularly worried. If you say so, Reiji Summer. Titania gave up on arguing and decided to believe in what Reiji was saying. As the conversation wound down, Mizuki suddenly thought of something and turned towards him. Hey, Reiji-kun, does Suimai-kun say things like I am a something or other style swordsman, Yakagi Suimai? Can he use some amazing kenjutsu or something? Huh? No matter how you look at it, that's a little. Wait, Mizuki. Or, what the heck? Suimai-kun is totally Chunibyo, isn't he? Hiding his true identity and going to some ancient martial arts school, that's just. It's unfair. Unfair, unfair, unfair. Super unfair. Ahaha. Now that she was starting to get angry, Mizuki couldn't even hear Reiji. She seemed far more upset that Suimai knew an ancient martial art than the fact that he'd hidden it. But it's not like Suimai ever said Choyuni stuff like you did. I don't think you can really call him a Chunibyo. Oops. Reiji stopped himself as he realized he had just spoken the taboo word. It was too late to turn back. As he turned slowly towards Mizuki, she was staring him down with a strange smile on her face. Oh, Reiji-kun. Sorry. You promised. You're not allowed to forget. Absolutely. It's ABSOLUTE. Right. Reiji had promised to never speak of Mizuki's sealed past. It was her secret garden, though Reiji didn't actually know what she meant when she said that. Titania then cutely put her finger on her mouth and tilted her head to the side. Mizuki, what is this Chunibyo? Huh? That's. What is it? Could it be that it's some kind of horrible illness? Yeah. Yes. That's right. Chunibyo is a sickness from our world that infects the majority of children in their early teens. Even if they are cured afterwards, there are dreadful after-effects that scar them for life. It's a truly terrible disease. Mizuki stammered through a reply to Titania's question. While waving both of her hands in front of her wildly, she tried her best to fib her way out of this. It was painfully obvious that her flustered actions were intended to misdirect Titania. In a way, she was getting her just desserts. But nevertheless, it seemed Titania would let it go. Her expression then turned grim. Setting that aside, about the demons just now. Why, yeah. Now that you mention it, why did they appear in a place like this? The demons, huh? Yes. Titania nodded. Just like Mizuki had guessed, the sudden attack from the demons was what was on her mind. Recalling the fight they'd just had, Mizuki started to look anxious again. Reiji then stated his own opinion on the matter. The demons are pushing into the Neltherian Empire. Is that a possibility? Is that what it is? I think so. If you think about it, it's the most likely scenario. If the demons are out here, that's the only real possibility, isn't it? As Reiji explained his theory, Mizuki's expression reflexively stiffened up. She still wasn't accustomed to battle, yet they were thrust into a situation where another battle with demons was very likely on the horizon. On top of that, the demons were extremely powerful. If they were just monsters, the magic that Mizuki had used earlier would have been enough to defeat them. And there were even stronger demons that could survive her fire unharmed. The very last of the demons they defeated today had demonstrated that. However, Titania raised an objection to Reiji's conjecture. No, I do not believe that is yet the case. Why is that, Tia? Well, as you said, Reiji-sama, this is the Empire's territory. If there are demons appearing here, then it's only rational to assume they've begun their invasion here. But in reality, after the demons took down Noshias, they have yet to make any large movements. To get this far, there are still 2 countries and a mountain range to pass through. And if they took the long way around, they would have to pass through the Sardia's alliance to reach this point. No matter how you look at it, that sort of reckless forced march is simply out of the question even for the demons. That's true. Even if they forcefully marched this far, it would only isolate their troops, right? Exactly. To have their army advance this far without first bringing down the two countries in between would have no real advantage for the demons. I see. Just as Titania had said, even if the army had made a move to come out this far, they simply would have isolated themselves. Anyone moving a large number of troops would know that it was necessary to establish garrisons and a protected supply line. A route would be necessary to safely replenish troops on the front line. That was the only way to move an invasion forward steadily. But there are still demons here. So even if the army hasn't made it this far, certain individuals or groups have. That's true too, Reiji Summer. That is the problem at hand. What do you think of the situation, Gregory-san? My humblest apologies, but I could not even begin to fathom the thought process of demons. Was there anything at all that you noticed? Even the most trivial thing could be helpful, Hiro Dono. More importantly, I believe it is vital that we quickly distance ourselves from this place. Gregory's sudden proposal to evacuate put Reiji on edge as he considered the implication behind his words. By that, do you mean there are demons nearby? No, I don't believe that's the case. Reiji wasn't sure why Gregory would suggest a retreat if demons were not nearby. The discrepancy between the situation and his words left Reiji with an uncomfortable feeling. On top of that, Gregory, who had denied the possibility of more demons, was acting awkwardly. Normally such a suggestion would only come after sensing danger nearby, but he had claimed that wasn't the case here. Titania then turned towards Gregory. Gregory, I also believe that we should head for a safe location. However, it is more important for us right now to get a better grasp of what the demons are planning. If we move around without such considerations, it may lead to even more danger. Yes, Your Highness, Gregory bowed apologetically to Titania, but Reiji was still pondering his odd behavior. He sounded like he was trying to drive them onward in a hurry. But putting that aside for now, Reiji spoke of another possibility to Titania. Tia, is there any chance of demons that aren't from the north? No, I don't believe so. All of the world's demons were driven north by the power of a previously summoned hero. They shouldn't be occupying any other territories. Reiji was stumped. No matter how much they puzzled over this, no answers were coming of it. The discussion, however, was interrupted by the sound of a galloping horse and a voice calling out to them from afar. "Ah, Reiji Summer." The voice belonged to someone much like Gregory, a young knight who had come to support them on their journey. The knights were occasionally tasked with separating from the group and acting as messengers to keep in contact with the castle. Gregory had been the one to go last time, and the duty most recently had fallen on this young knight who now approached on horseback and dismounted when he reached the princess and the others. Free-san. "I have returned, Reiji Summer." "Hail, Free. Are you in good health?" As Titania casually asked about his well-being, Free stood dumbfounded for an instant, and then immediately began panicking. A single knight such as I does not deserve the consideration of the princess." "Ahem, Free." "Yes, Your Highness." "No, more importantly over there." As Gregory let a cough and called out to him, Free jumped in place and was now flustered for an entirely different reason. His soaring heart had been brought quite rudely back down to earth. Seeing Roffery observe their surroundings with a puzzled expression, Reiji decided to explain. "Ah, so you noticed. Just a moment ago, they attacked us and we struck them down." "All of those?" "Yeah. As expected. Reiji Summer." "Ah, no, not that." Roffery showed no signs of calming down anytime soon, so Gregory spoke to move him along. "What is the matter, Roffery? You have been quite agitated all this time. Also, what happened to Luca? She went with you to the castle, so why has she not returned with you?" "Yes, allow me to explain." Roffery took a brief pause, and then began telling the group what had transpired. "It's a little abrupt, but we must distance ourselves from here as quickly as possible." "Why is that?" A large force of demons seemed to have passed through the territories of Thoria and Shattuck and broken through Astel's northern border. Rufri delivered the astonishing news with a serious expression. Thoria and Shattuck were countries situated to the north of Nelfaria and Astal. Titania went as white as a sheet at this sudden news and raised her voice. "Is this true, Free?" "Why yes, Your Highness. This was a report from the castle, so it's probably." Titania drew closer to Free as she questioned him. Completely overwhelmed by her intensity, Free gave only a weak reply. Reiji then picked up on the phrasing of his words a moment ago. "Free-san, what did you mean by seem to have?" "That's..." The report came from the night guard at the border who found evidence of what seemed like a demon force by coincidence. I also do not know all the details." "Well, what is this evidence?" "Yes, they found footprints belonging to no man or known monster, as well as traces of mana." "Free, did anybody actually see any demons?" "No, it seems that they are not moving openly. There are no reports of witnesses or attacks." "How could that be? If there are demons, you'd normally think that they would be spreading havoc, right?" Everyone nodded at Mizuki's observant statement. Demons viewed humans with intense hostility, and they were the type to always act according to those instincts. If they were passing through borders, surely their goal was to cause chaos. Even if they had some other objective in mind, the fact that they were moving as a large army wouldn't stop that. In fact, larger numbers were ideal for stirring up maximum chaos and bloodshed. If that's not the case this time, then our information is too lacking or its authenticity isn't credible. What if the ones that attacked here are the ones who broke through the border? Rufri made the connection between the report and the recent attack, more specifically, that the demons were likely a single part of the larger force. Gregory then steered the conversation towards a previous topic. "So what about Luca?" "Yes, to make sure the message was safely delivered, she headed to Courant City. She will rendezvous with us after a day in the neighboring empire." Gregory gave a brief nod of acknowledgement at Rufri's report. Titania then made a grim expression and spoke. "This has gotten quite ugly." "You mean that our movements have been exposed to the demons? Normally that kind of thing should be impossible, right? But if something strange has happened." The sudden demon attack seemed too much like a coincidence. Even if they had known of the hero summoning and pressed forward to attack, the number of demons present was far too scant to actually defeat a hero. Pondering just what could be afoot, Reiji closed his eyes. Is it possible that the demons know that a hero has been summoned, but have not yet grasped any of the finer details? Perhaps the ones just now were more of a reconnaissance force. I see, so they were in the middle of searching for opponents who might be the hero. If it became known that a large group of demons was roaming the land, it would be harder for them to find what they were looking for. So to prevent that, they were scouting in smaller groups. Mizuki and Titania were both taken aback by this conclusion. But Reiji figured if that was the case, there would be at least one among the band of them who could communicate with the main force. No one they'd fought seemed to fit that role, but it was too soon to come to any conclusions. Even if their location hadn't been exposed, this was still a serious situation. As Reiji was coming to this conclusion in his mind, Mizuki spoke up. "If they're nearby, that's bad news. All the horses except for Freeze were killed by the demons." "Yeah. In the worst case scenario, we won't even be able to run. We'd be forced to face them." "Free, was there any conjecture as to the real scale of the demon force?" "It was likely over 1,000. That's..." Mizuki and Reiji were both left speechless at that estimate. It was definitely not a number that they would be able to take on themselves. Even taking out a smaller squad just now had cost them quite a bit of time. And now 1,000? As Reiji imagined the scene of such numbers coming at them all at once, he recalled Suimai's words. Mizuki then raised her voice with a flustered expression. In that case, we should quickly get away from here." "No, Mizuki-sama. It's not a good idea for us to run away recklessly. The only horse we have is the one I brought back. Instead, we should decide on a route and make sure to keep water and food in mind." Referee returned a very reasonable proposal to Mizuki, who had begun panicking. Everyone nodded in agreement. Titania then turned to question Gregory, who hadn't made any contributions this entire conversation. "Gregory, what do you think we should do?" However, Gregory did not answer. Everyone's eyes fell upon him. Reiji could hear him quietly mumbling to himself, "It should be a suitable time now." Gregory. "Yes, Hero Dono. I don't believe there's any reason to be worried." Gregory said those last words with a bitter expression on his face. It was the first sign of the storm brewing along Reiji's journey. Chapter 3: The Demon General Rajas. A few days had passed since the trade corps that Suimai was escorting departed from the royal capital of metal. They had yet to encounter monsters, bandits, or even heavy rain. They had simply been moving forward, only stopping here and there at small villages and relay stations along the way. Just the other day, they passed over what was believed to be the major obstacle in the journey, the mountains, and they were now traveling a fairly rugged road. According to the others in the trade corps, they were about 2/3 of the way to their destination. Once they passed through the foothills and the following basin, Courant City would be on the horizon. However, even if this was a different world, its principles seemed largely the same. Much like on Earth, nothing would ever go that smoothly here. The group eventually made it past the foothills and entered a wooded area that grew dense on occasion. It would have been an extraordinary sight with sunlight filtering through the trees, but it was so overcast that it only made the forest seem gloomy. The ashen sky was almost ominous. There was an unease in the air, and before long, Suimai could sense a dangerous presence in the vicinity. "Suimai-kun, have you noticed?" "Well, more or less." Suimai only knew that there was something nearby. Ever since they'd set foot in the forest, he'd felt a bad premonition prickling at the back of his neck. And now, as he focused on the presence approaching from the side, that feeling seemed totally justified. Whatever it wasn't human. "Hey, are those monsters? Something doesn't feel right." "Not monsters. Demons." "Huh? Demons?" Suimai and Lefiel had talked about that possibility previously. "You seem awfully sure about that. Couldn't it be something else?" "No, I'm certain." "Why?" "I'm quite familiar with them. I can say that it's demons beyond a shadow of doubt. There's no mistaking it." When Suimai asked for confirmation, Lefiel gave a rather stiff reply. As the dangerous presence drew nearer, the others in the trade corps noticed and all movement came to an abrupt stop. Shortly after, an armored adventurer quietly came over to the two of them with a sense of urgency. The grim look on his face seemed to indicate he knew what was going on. "Hey!" The adventurer called out to them, and Lefiel gave a serious nod in reply. "Yeah, we noticed it too." "Oh yeah? Okay, then I'll make this quick. According to one of the mages, the things approaching us seem to be monsters. Galio's intention is to meet their ambush here." Unlike what Lefiel had suggested, the other adventurers seemed to suspect the incoming presence was monsters. But in either case, the plan was to stay in place and wait for them. Suimai didn't think it was a great idea. "We'll meet them here." "Yeah, that's right. Is there a problem with an escort fighting?" "No, that's not the issue. What will the merchants do?" If they waited for the enemy to attack, it was certain that the merchants they were here to protect would be in danger. In order to make sure they wouldn't get caught up in the fighting, an escort would normally have the merchants retreat somewhere safe before engaging in combat. The road behind them at the bottom of the mountain, however, was particularly rugged and didn't have a lot of cover, making it a difficult place to try and hide. Lefiel knew that and shared Suimai's doubt about the current plan, so she tried suggesting an alternative. "Perhaps we could have them go ahead and then intercept the ambush?" "No, that won't do." "Then could they go further into the forest?" "No, that also won't work either." The adventurer shook his head at everything Lefiel said, but Lefiel's plan was a sound one. She wanted to allow the merchants to continue along the path, then have the escort ambush the ambush. It would be the most effective way to cut them off. But nonetheless, the adventurer was quite set on taking another course of action. He explained himself with a stern look on his face. "Listen, it looks like there are monsters ahead of us too. With that and the ones approaching from the side, it's possible there are also some behind us. In the worst scenario, we may even be completely surrounded. And if that's the case, rather than moving